the United Arab Emirates backed the Rapid Support Forces in Sudan in an attempt to take over the government because they were afraid that they would lose influence in Sudan if a civilian democratic government got elected, which was in the works. And the UAE has been positioning itself for years now as a broker for everyone's interests. And that's what they were doing in Sudan. They wanted to be a broker for everyone's interests, as opposed to the West dominating Sudan, or China dominating Sudan, or Russia dominating Sudan. They wanted to dominate Sudan and manage everyone else's stake in Sudan. They wanted to be the middleman. I talked about this all the way back when the attempted coup first took place. I said, and I think it's been borne out over time, that everyone was aware of what the UAE was doing. The Americans were aware, the Europeans were aware, the Russians and the Chinese. Everyone was aware, and everyone approved of what the UAE was doing at that time. For the Russians and for the Chinese, and I think for Saudi Arabia as well, their approval was conditional on the coup succeeding and stability being secured and restored quickly. The Americans and the Europeans, well, they approved because either way they could benefit. If the coup succeeded, then they could do business with the UAE. They could mitigate some of China's and Russia's influence by means of the UAE, and they could protect their own interests. But if the coup failed, then for them, the country can fall into chaos and violence, and that's fine. Because if that happens, then China's and Russia's interests would be undermined anyway, which is mostly what they wanted. And they could push for the war in Sudan to escalate until eventually Sudan could be divided yet again, after they had already successfully divided the South from the country. Now the West could be broken off. So for them, it's a win-win. If the coup works, they win, and if the coup doesn't work, they win. And of course, this is how it's gone. Everyone talks about India being the potential spoiler of BRICS, but in my opinion, the UAE is more dangerous to the BRICS project than India is, even if unintentionally. Because, in my opinion, Mohammed bin Zayed seems to want to emulate the Western colonizer strategy of violence and the strategy of divide and conquer, which is completely at odds with the whole ethos and the whole approach of BRICS. Whether he knows it or not, I think, in my opinion, he's absolutely playing into the hands of the West by backing the RSF. I mean, not only is the UAE pushing Sudan towards balkanization, he's feeding the monster of Arab-African animosity that the CIA has spent millions of dollars trying to foment for years. This is absolutely the last thing that they should be doing. As I said, because the Middle East and Africa are the most important regions on earth. And solidarity and unity between the Arab world and Africa needs to be cultivated. It needs to be fortified. It needs to be strengthened. The UAE is the biggest foreign investor in Africa, more than 3 times Chinese investment. As much as you hear about Chinese investment in Africa, the UAE invests more. It's nearly 10 times the amount of American investment in Africa. And they're doing that precisely because they understand how important Africa is. But with what they're doing in Sudan, well, no one's going to see them as friends. No one's going to see them as allies or partners. They're going to see them as invaders, as usurpers, and who can blame them? What happened in the South African elections was a win for the West. And what's happening in Sudan is also a win for the West, whether the UAE knows it or not. These are among the moves and counter moves I was talking about. The thing that will determine whether the transition to the global South actually results in the economic sovereignty and political independence of the global South, or whether it results in further subjugation and pillage, the thing that will determine that is BRICS. I mean, the UAE has been incredibly strategic in building their power and building their autonomy over the last 30 years. But their actions in Sudan can undo everything that they've achieved.